لازم معلش لو عايز الريكوردينج ممكن بس انا معايا بتاع يا عم انا واقف يا عم انا اسف ورق انا اسف اوكي. Okay guys, so next talk with us we have Mohamed Nassar. He is a technical director at LookSoft, right? LookSoft. He will be talking to us today about autonomous drive, which will be very interesting after what we heard last session from Ahmed about like the complexity of adding even just the smart things or like software, building software for a car. Now, you know, how autonomous driving even would be an interesting topic. So let's give him a hand.
Hi everyone. Okay. Yeah, I will be talking about autonomous drive. So I will first give quick overview about the company, what's called LookSoft, and then I will give overview about autonomous drive. So it's good that I found that not everyone or not a lot of people working on automotive. So my presentation I hope will be very interesting. Yeah, because it's assuming almost no automotive background. And then I will discuss about what are the key challenges that are facing the autonomous drive and going into what's called full autonomy driving, and what are the existing and future solutions. And again, because we don't have cars running in the street autonomously, then we know that it's not yet finished finding solutions. And then related to this topic, if we have time, I will talk about teleoperated driving, which is similar or close to autonomous drive. So first, I will talk about, as I said, my company, LookSoft Automotive. So LookSoft is a IT service provider. We have many areas. So we are working in the financial and business segments, but also in the automotive. So here I'm focusing only on the automotive part. So our headquarters is in Switzerland, and we are about 3,000 employees. We have 40 plus clients. As you can see, we are spread into 3 areas, mainly in Europe and mainly Eastern and Western Europe, but we also have Asia and US locations and clients as well. And we are about 200 million revenue, again, only for LookSoft Automotive. LookSoft as a whole is about 13,000 employees, and we are about 1 billion revenue. And as you may have saw from the first slide, LookSoft is now part of DXC, which is a bigger IT services, which is built from the spin-out of HP, which is called HPE. I think you will know about it because you come from this area. So DXC is actually the biggest IT service provider. They are about 130 employees without LookSoft. So now it's about 140 something. 21 billion of revenue, and you can see the numbers. So 70 countries, 10,000 employees, and yeah, one of the countries is Egypt as well, that DXC has a site there. So yeah, so DXC acquired LookSoft last June, July. And please, yeah, I have a long presentation, so I'm not sure if we will have some questions at the end, so please feel free to stop me and ask any question on the right. Yeah, and going back to LookSoft Automotive, we are spread by what we call practices or offering. So we have 3 main areas, and a 4th one, I will focus mainly on the 3. So we have offering in what's called digital cockpit, autonomous drive, and connected mobility. So digital cockpit is everything which has a screen. Like again, the terminology digital cockpit is given to the instrument cluster and IVI. So I hope you are familiar with this terminology. So instrument cluster is where the speedometer and all those things, and IVI is the infotainment system inside the car, which is mainly like, as I was explaining, it started with just radio in the 50s and then went into more sophisticated. Up to now, you have a big touch screen doing lots of crazy things. So this is digital cockpit. It's one of our practices or offering. You can see we are offering different things in this area, starting with the design. So we are already working with many of the big clients. We just announced, or we actually, Daimler announced that they have this MBUX, their UX design, which went now into the A series of their car and will go soon to the C series, and we help them build it. And we also support the HMI platform. So if you are familiar with Qt, we are also doing lots of Qt development in the car. And yeah, maybe it's surprising for some, but we are using Qt in the car, especially for the infotainment. And we have navigation. We are also doing navigation and info ADAS in the digital cockpit. Also, we are providing the instrument cluster and IVI platforms. And we're doing the connectivity also for the digital cockpit. And then the second practice is autonomous drive, where I am coming from. So I am the director in the autonomous drive. We have 5 areas. So we have the autonomous functions. Those are the applications that allow running autonomously or doing autonomous functionality. And I will explain what is autonomous in the coming slides. Another area is the safety software development. So you will hear also in the coming slide, why do we need safety in the area of autonomous drive? So as Ahmed was explaining, you will need safety in the car because the car is driving in the street and you cannot allow that you hit people or even you do in accidents, and then you have very high safety regulation. And especially in the area of autonomous, this is where most of the R&D in the safety investment is. So we are supporting in this area as well. And the third topic is the vehicle platforms and tool. This is about building the autonomous drive platforms, and I will explain what is this shortly. And we connected to the autonomous drive, we have the body and gateway functionality. And the last thing is data and simulation. And also, I think those are not clear now, but I will explain later what are the relations between data and simulation and autonomous drive. And the third practice is connected mobility. This is everything, again, from the name connected activities like telematics. You have usually an antenna on top of the car to connect to the cloud or connect to the 3G and do all your connection. But also we support in the diagnostics and in the IoT and in mobile applications. So also building the softwares. So now all the new cars, you have an application where you can control the car and even open it remotely. So this also a mobile application we are supporting in this area. And last is the silicon and technology vendor. So this is about helping the silicon manufacturer to build hardware and software, which is mainly about the drivers and low layer like hypervisors or low level software to be provided to the car manufacturing. And of course, this all comes with the 4 things that are needed for automotive: system testing, cyber security. So you need definitely security in the car, so that, again, because we have connectivity, which is connected to the cloud or to the 3G or to the mobile network, or even connection to the via Bluetooth or other technologies, you need security. And safety definitely is one of the key. And the last thing is, of course, to be able to develop those kind of software, you will need DevOps and process consulting. These are our clients, our current clients, and you can see it's almost everyone who is working in the automotive business, or most of the big ones. You can find them there, from OEMs, which are the car manufacturers. Tier 1s are the ones who are building those ECUs, like the popular name like Bosch, Clarion, Delphi, you name it, and some technology vendors like the standards like Genevi or Autosar, or the Qt company, who are also, Qt is one of our customers as well. We are helping to build some of the Qt platforms that will go into the cars, and some of the hardware manufacturers like AMD and Intel and Infineon.
Who are your competitors?
Sorry? As LookSoft or as DXC? So as LookSoft, we have lots of IT services competitors. So again, we are a services provider. So there are lots of small ones in the automotive business. There are medium and big ones like L&T, or the Indian ones, or even some here in Germany. So actually automotive, there are more than like 100 or 200 service supplier, let's call it like this, in the industry. So there are hundreds for LookSoft. Any other questions? Good. Then we will go to autonomous drive, and we have a saying that we say we are supporting autonomous drive, which is from sensor to motion. And again, shortly you will know what does it mean from sensor to motion. Yeah, I'm just starting with this screen to tell you, and later on I will tell you why do we need autonomous drive. So not about, I'm not talk about how we do autonomous drive, but just to give you an overview about why do we need autonomous drive. So just keep this picture in mind when I continue talking, because yeah, it's clearly, and let's go to the statistics. So my favorite one, which is time, because I'm already spending significant amount of time in commuting, so in going in the morning to work or dropping my kids to school and back, especially driving. So as you can see, average commute time is about 10% of your free time. You are spending it commuting, and which means adding at least 8 more years to your life if you consider autonomous drive. So again, these are statistics. And safety, you can see already how many people are dying on the street. So of course, the idea of autonomous drive is to reduce the human factor which causes, or some parts of the human factor which causes accidents. And definitely accessibility, because not everyone can drive. There are of course people who are like younger or older or not trained. So yeah, like we know how to get a German license, of course. So it's not easy. And the last one is money, of course, that you can see already how much is spent. So like wasting 94% of the cost. And then what are the challenges that are facing doing autonomous drive? Why can't we have the cars driving by itself? We already have the technology that allows or should allow this, all the artificial intelligence. We have robots, we have everything that is, let's say, automatically working. And you can see one of the examples why we cannot have this. Imagine a car driving in such road where like you can see from the wind, you even cannot see the signs and the light signals, and you cannot, and this again what is called hazards or environmental conditions that are causing autonomous drive not being, again, not easy to do. You can also read it quickly. Some of the things, again, like cloud, like rain, maybe winds, or even, so other than, let's call it the natural things, there are also the human or the artificial things, like, again, construction work. You see already when you walk in the street, lots of streets that you change, the whole street has changed because of construction, so they even can use pedestrian passes, or you can have bicycle lanes, and all these kind of changes are just challenges or the difficulty why we cannot have autonomous drive vehicles. Other one is what's called dynamic external hazards. So even if all the environment, and even if we can control all the construction and we can have all this data, you still have people like this guy who is driving the motorcycle, and this is for fun to enjoy this video if you can see it, that you can see. So people, again, you cannot control the behavior of other vehicles who are not yet driving autonomously. And again, like people with walking inside the street itself, you know, and even kids running in the street, or even people opening doors. So all those things you cannot control and you cannot manage. Yeah. Would you like to see him until he jumps into the? Yeah. Anyway, let's skip. He will fall here. Yeah. Now, yes. Okay. Thank you. Yes. And then to start talking now more practical. So this was the fun part, and now we go to the, I would say, ugly part with the technical terminologies. So when we talk about autonomous drive, usually we talk about what's called 5 levels, or some people call it 6 levels, because they count the level 0. So especially, again, if you talk to someone who is working in the automotive domain and you start talking about autonomous drive, he will start talking about L1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's for you to know what are those L words. So again, L0 is there is only driver, and this, again, we can call the cars until the 90s or 80s. They were like this. There was no assistance. You have some functionality like ECUs in the car, but there was no autonomous drive. And then L1, which came into like in the late 80s, 90s time, when you had some, like, again, sensors, some things which supporting you. So it doesn't take control, but it notify you and maybe do some small control like speed limit or something like this. And then nowadays we have what's called L2, which the driver is doing the traffic monitoring, but the car can do what's called longitudinal and lateral control, which means it can control its path and it can control right to left, which means like the adaptive cruise control and lane detection and correction. Those are two features which are existing in nowadays cars, and even with the example I was giving, like with Tesla. But Tesla is actually going into what's called L3. I will explain it shortly. But L2 is, as I said, most of the new Audi, Daimler, or whatever cars, you can find this feature where, as I said, like doing adaptive cruise control, which means you can control the in front of you and the speed, and also control the lateral control, which means all the lane detection and correction, so that you can follow a specific path. Yes, please join us. Sorry? It's L2, and exactly this is example. So also with automatic parking, that it can do both. It can back and forth, and it also can do maneuvers. And this is what's called L2, and this is nowadays. And L3 is what's called conditional automation. So here the car is doing the full control. So not in specific condition where you only turn it on or off, like the adaptive cruise control or something like this. But again, like what Tesla, so we can call the Tesla as early L3. It's not yet L3, because here it should drive in all conditions. Not like the Tesla or even the new cars that have this highway pilot feature, which means that on the highway you can turn it on, and then it drives and you visit the destination, and it drives and even take maneuvers and reroute according to specific map and follow the roads. And here it's about, and as I said, so here the cars is do everything and only provide takeover requests. So only tells the driver, oh, now I cannot handle this situation. Again, you remember the hazards, a pedestrian passing or something that like road construction, which again, like a video just popped up a couple of weeks ago where Tesla was able to drive through a construction area which the car was not didn't know about. So it was able to detect, oh, this is a new construction area, where should I go, and was able to do the maneuver. And this was like the crazy invention that Tesla was proud of like a couple of weeks ago. So because this will get us to L3, what's called L3, that you have still, you need a driver back in the back of the wheel to take control whenever there is, again, something that the car cannot control, but it should be able to control all conditions. Yes?
Yeah, I've just one simple question.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a Tesla car is based on recognition when
Yes.
it comes to holes on the street. But recognition, you know, based on machine learning or deep learning, has only a confidence interval of maximum 72
Yes.
or 79. So what is with the rest?
I will get to this shortly.
Okay.
So I'm just giving a description about the different, again, autonomous levels. And then we go into L3, as I said, where the car is doing all the driving and only the driver to take over. And then L4, where the car don't need a driver anymore, but you will need someone to still monitor, so almost no takeover, but you still need someone on a system where you have all the cars running and just he is monitoring. So in case of problems, the car can park and then someone can drive it. And this is why at the end I will talk about the teleoperated driving, which is closed, because when we reach L4, you will need teleoperated driving, because again, you need someone in case of, again, the car broke down or something, to be able to control it remotely and drive it somewhere to the parking garage or something. Yes.
Is Google considered L4? Like Waymo? Is it considered?
No, no one is beyond this line now, except, as I said, some early adopters of L3. No cars now, even with Google, or even, again, Uber is also doing some experiments. There is a city in South Korea and in China where they changed it completely, the infrastructure, and trying to run again, but it will be still L3. And because, again, here we are talking L3, it should be running in all conditions and all roads, not in a specific designated area. So you can call it L4 in designated area, like what I also called about, but this is L2 for me. It's similar to the highway pilot. Now, lots of cars can drive in the highway autonomously. You saw already the people sleeping in the Tesla, or even Audi or BMW or Daimler, they have now cars running on the highway autonomously. But still you need a driver at the back, at the seat, or you are just, like, again, all those other than automatic parking, there is also in some areas where you have those cars like Drive Now or Car2Go, which are picking people and driving them, but again, also in designated area. And this, yes, you can call it L4, but it's L4 in specific conditions.
Is that only in consumer area, like for example in military, is it more advanced than in consumer, or is it nothing, nobody has reached that point?
No, here we are only talking about automotive, which means automobiles. So we are talking about cars and trucks in the roads. We are not talking about military, and we are not talking about aerospace, like, or even airlines, or like planes, or those conditions, or trains even. So trains, of course, has more autonomy than in automobiles. So I'm not talking about rail, and
not rail. I mean like the four-wheel driven vehicles, but in military space. Did they reach?
But again, if they run on the road, then they are automotive. If they run on a desert or on a military mission, then they are not automotive. You know, these are military applications. Yeah. So I'm not focusing on military, and yeah, don't get us there. Yeah. So anyway, and the last one, which is L5, which we want to reach everywhere, and we also saw in the movies where with iRobot and all those movies where all the cars are running autonomously and no one is in the driver, and just passenger people who are just joining the car and just enjoying. And what I also give the example is that future car, like in 20, 30, maybe 40 years, you don't need any drivers, and you don't need all those instrument cluster, all those things. My view is that the car will turn out to be home entertainment inside. So just like big screens using the windshield, you don't need to see what is outside of the car eventually, because again, you don't need to control it. And this is what we want to achieve. So you can see in the first 3 levels, the human himself, he is the one who goes to driving school to be able to pass the driving test and get the driving license to be able to do this. And now we need the machine to do this. We need the machine to go to driving school to learn and be able to pass the driving test, and then to be able to drive on the road. And this is what we can read from the left. It's called Disruptive Gap. So this again was the current technologies that people were working on, and now we need to move to this area. And I will, but in the end of, or before the end of my slide, I will tell you how this is impacting building software in the cars. Yeah, so quickly, again, this is a quick, also for fun, example of what will happen if the driver of a car assumes it's L3, like I was saying, that it can drive by its own on the highway without interaction of the driver, while it's only L2, which I just explained, like the highway pilot. And you need the driver to be awake, not sleeping, to be able to take control when there is a problem and not have an accident. This I will explain in more details, how the cars can see what's called see around it to be able to drive. And this is what I explained before, is the car needs to learn to go to driving school and then pass a driving test to be able to drive by its own. So first solution or first challenge is is enabling what's called L2 even. So nowadays, as I explained, we have this L2, and that's why please remember those 5 levels, because I will be using the terminology too much. So L2 to enable L2 to L5, and this is exactly to your question, how can we enable the car to be able to drive by itself, even starting with the highway pilot, this example that I always gave, this car that is driving in the highway by itself. We need all those kinds of things. So you need, for adaptive cruise control, you will need ultrasound, because you need to find the car which is far away, that is in front of you, to start slowing down early enough, and then LiDAR for emergency braking, and then the camera. And this is exactly the point, is that the camera can be used maybe for lane departure, traffic sign, but and I will explain also in the next slides why you cannot have only and this was the first versions of the Tesla, for example, to have 8 cameras around the car, and then it should be enough to be able to drive, let's call it autonomously. But on real life, it's not enough, because the camera, and as I said, I will show in the next slide, is not enough. The input from the camera is not enough to do this. So then, as you can see, and this is why so the guy left, about why do we have so much ECUs, what's called ECUs in the car. Imagine, at least now we are talking about, you have cameras, 1, 2, 3, 4, and because of the surround view, and this again, you have this 36 view when you do parking or when you do whatever. So you have at least 4 cameras, maybe 8, and then you have leaders in the front and maybe also in the back. You have ultrasound. You have all the other like long range radar for the blind spot. And then you, of course, need wireless communication to be able to get data or information, like, again, road blockage or anything, information that you need to get from, again, the radio or the cloud or through the mobile network. Yes?
I have two questions, actually. This image a little bit confusing me. The ultrasound, is it ultrasonic sensor? Because ultrasonic sensor doesn't have a longer range than the LiDAR or the camera. Okay.
Okay.
So this.
So some people may swap this, but in general, ultrasound should have more range than the leader. The leader has more accuracy. So let me go to the next slide, and then you can see the difference between camera, leader, and radar, and you even can see the inputs here. So this is an input from camera, you can see, and with the weather conditions, and this is a problem of the camera, is that with the weather conditions, the camera, like, again, if it's crazy raining or if there is a fog, then the camera is almost useless. And now you have the leader, and then this is the leader, and then you have the radar. And here I didn't show the ultrasound, but we can show it. And you can see already the leader. You can see already how it can detect the vehicle that is on the left.
That's not my question. I was asking, I know the difference between the sensors because I worked in ADAS before. So what is confusing me right now is,
as I said, it could be, it depends on the functionality.
The ultrasound is usually used for parking as a parking sensor. So so I think that I'm not sure why this is the case here. Maybe this is something new I don't know about.
Again, it's just an example. So there is also multiple usage. So people, as I said, there are people who are not using leader or radar, or maybe using leader only or ultrasound only. I'm just giving example of use cases. So camera are usually used in those features. Of course, as I explained, Tesla was using cameras for everything at the beginning, and then they changed. So, and there are people, again, old cars, they only had those radars and long-range radars. Even the leader is already just out 10 years ago or something like this. So this kind of technology is new. So
the second question is, do you think LiDAR sensor is more going to be used soon? Because Elon Musk said that it's not going to be used. Do you think that
I think
are you working on this?
Yeah, we are working on the development of leaders as well.
Oh.
So we think leader. So I'm not sure about ultrasound. This I would answer you, but maybe used at the back. But you still can have radars. You don't need maybe ultrasound. So it depends. And sorry, just let me answer. So, but leaders, I think you need it because, again, the long range of the leader and the accuracy. So, and this is just clearly. So the accuracy of the leader is more than the ultrasound. You can also see it quickly from this video that the leader can detect things which are far, whereas the radar, once you go out of your scope, you cannot.
That's not the case in Vallejo, at least. But yeah.
Yeah, of course there are.
What about you were talking about the sensors, and there are all terrestrial sensors. What about satellites? Well, we have satellites and we have LiDAR, and we have, regarding recognition, we can go up to 10 square centimeters. When you're looking on smart farming, for example.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering why Elon Musk has not, he's just starting, I think, 4,000 satellites to shift in the orbit. But
yeah, it's a good question. So at least this is my view. So the view is you need this data to come from inside the car because, again, like I explained the conditions. What happens if the car don't have any connectivity? Will it stop? Will it not drive? Or should it drive? And this is the main problem that is facing now the car manufacturer, is that they cannot rely too much on the cloud or on data coming from satellite or from outside.
Latency, yeah, that's the problem.
No, the latency is one of the problems, but we can discuss how we can solve the latency problem. But again, it's not about latency, but about connection, coverage. How much is it covered? Even in Germany, like if you go now to the roads, you can easily find lots of roads which don't have any coverage. So of course, when you have the full coverage on all the roads, then you can immediately do more. And this is when we go to L5, this is exactly what we need. When you go to L4 and L5, you will need to use more cloud computing. You cannot do all the processing and all the things inside the car. And this is what I will describe soon about this disruptive, that lots of things that happening now. Again, I'm just talking about starting with L2. So now with the L2, these are the kind of architecture that you will need all the sensors and data to come from inside the car and be processed inside the car, and I will explain how it's processed, and then the decision is taken inside the car. And then when you go to L4 and L5, you will need to do this on the cloud through the data from satellites, even again, this what's called smart cities or smart roads, that even the data you can get. And they are, as I give the example, they are already building in South Korea and Asia, and here also there are experiments in Europe where they are building those, again, smart cities, where the roads themselves and the signs, they are intelligent and they are already sending signals to the cars to tell them, oh, be aware, there is a construction area or something or hazard when you turn right, and you don't wait until you go right to find it. And those things are what is happening now and will happen, is that once you have those smart, then you can, of course, remove lots of things inside the car. Any other question? Okay. So how can we manage all these kinds of data? So as I explained, you have cameras, you have LiDAR, we have radars, and you have lots of sensors in the car. And how can we do this and reach this? Then you can, from all this data, have image of what is happening in the car, and this is what's called sensor fusion. So maybe people are familiar already with this terminology or not, but the idea of sensing and fusion is to gather all the data. And this is why, back to answering the question, why do we need so much ECUs in the car? Because the idea is not that you will have 10 cameras and LiDAR and radar and send all the data to your main PC, and then it will have thousands of or kilobytes or megabytes or terabytes of data that it needs to process to do decisions. And this is definitely crazy and will not happen or cannot happen even with supercomputers that you put your biggest server, if you put it in the car, it will not happen. And this is why you need to break that each of those devices need to have their own ECU. So for example, a camera ECU that do what's called initial processing. So you get the image from the camera, you do your image processing, maybe some filtering, and then send only the data that you need to send to what's called sensor fusion. And then at the end, this sensor fusion output what's called the reliable, denoised, aligned 3D geometry. It tells you what is happening outside of the car from all the inputs from those sensors and yeah, again, all those cameras, sensors, and everything. And then going one step further, so after we do this what's called sensor fusions, now we have this what's called supercomputer or this AD, autonomous drive ECU, which then can do what's called the perception. So doing object detection, doing recognition, again, like understanding. So this is your car, and then you need to understand you have a cyclist, you have people, someone who is opening the door, and there is a tree, and identify all the things around you. And again, maybe there is a pedestrian. Even from, you can see from the camera image, you cannot even see this pedestrian that is already in front of the car, but this you can detect from other sensors that are inside the car. And this is what happens. For now, it's in the AD computer, but maybe it will be moved also to another ECU separately later to do this what's called perception, to have vision, to the car understand what is happening around it. And I can quickly give you this video. And this is what's happening from the perception. So you have cameras, and again, you have also LiDAR and radar to detect everything. And now you can detect, oh, there is cars around me, if there is a light, and what is the traffic light. And again, because this is kind of a highway or not a public road where you have people, but you can also detect, like here, again, you detected this motorcycle with people on it. And this is, again, what we need to achieve, is this perception, the car, to what's wrote above, what the car sees, to be able to understand what the car can see, and then do all, from what the car can see, do all this artificial intelligence, machine learning to teach it how to drive autonomously. Yes, and now back to the famous car picture with all the kinds of ECU. Oh, I only have 10 minutes left, even with question and answers. Okay, so I will try to jump fast. So this is from autonomous drive view, because again, there are, as explained by Ahmed, there are hundreds ECUs in the car. I am eliminating all ECUs which are not helping in driving autonomously. So I'm only looking at, and I also exhibit, and just for you, I think people, if no automotive, will ask, is all architectures have this kind of redundant? No, it's an example of an architecture that can be in a car. So this is an example. There are different kinds of architecture. Again, here you can see already how many cameras, radar, lidar. This could be an XC90 or the Audi Q8 or something like this. But of course, lots of other cars may even don't have any autonomous drive. So this again is an example of kind of architecture that can be in the car to do this autonomous drive. Again, here we're only talking about L2 and L3, not talking about L4 and L5. So usually, or it could be that you have this redundant high performance computing platform. And I will explain again what is this, especially this one we will go into details, where you get all the data from all the sensors, but also you get, and this is why I said in autonomous drive we have work in body and gateway. Why do we need? Because you need to understand what is happening inside the car. Again, the door is open or not open, there is a driver, is he awake, as you saw from the picture above, where is he looking? So you have a camera inside to know where the driver is, if he is looking in the road or not. And then you have this cockpit, again, this dashboard and infotainment, and you will need the connection because this cockpit is the one connected to the, usually connected to the cloud or to the mobile network, and also because the driver, all the the information can come from this cockpit, like the speed and all the how to call it, again, the things that the driver decide, he can input it on this cockpit. And then you have all those things. So jumping quickly to this high performance computing. Oh yeah, and this is another view. If you look at, again, you have sensors, you have those ECU sensors, so which do the processes, and then you have this complex high performance computing platforms, three ones, one for autonomous drive, one for IVI, and one for gateway. Again, this is also example of architecture. There are hundreds types of architectures which you can run in those kinds of ECU. And if I go into details of this, okay, and just one quick slide explaining that back in the old days, we used to have microcontrollers in the car, and those are like 16-bit microcontrollers. The good thing is that only few people in embedded, so they will know those kind of traditional microcontrollers. And nowadays, in the new cars, we need to go into this SoCs with multi-cores, with MMUs, and with all, like, to be able to run POSIX, again, like Linux, Android, all those kinds of operating systems, to have the dynamic, again, for software update, to be able to have high computing. Again, you need GPUs, you need all those kinds of technologies which are existing in PCs or in other areas, but they weren't existing in the automotive, and now you need to introduce those kinds of microcontrollers, and this is why we call it a new world with adaptive AutoSAR and not the classic one or other kind of architectures. And again, if you want to go into this microcontroller and understand, so usually you have a kind of a SoC, this kind of what's called high performance computing platform, this HPC inside the car. Quickly, but just to tell you, so sorry, those ones, 1, 2, 3, and 4, those 4 ECUs, this is the architecture. Usually you have 2, 4, 8, now actually it could be 16 or 20 cores with ARM v8 Cortex-A architecture, which has an MMU and which allows to run multiple POSIX operating system. And here you can have a hypervisor. And here we are talking about Zen-like hypervisors, which can again run those kinds of operating systems. And you can run adaptive, run native C++, or even again run Linux, Android, whatever, so that you can do the processing of the data. And you have this kind of classic or this safe microcontroller, which have, again, if we talk about safety, this kind of architecture will not reach high safety levels or standards with this IDO called ASIL-B. This is the second level of safety, but this kind of architectures, like the microcontroller architecture, can reach up to ASIL-D, the highest safety level. And usually here you do the processing, and then the decision making, or the and the decisions but the actuation itself, so the control to the steering or to the brake or to the speeding, usually is controlled from these microcontrollers, and this is what's connected then to the actuators. And this is example of this kind of suppliers. So we have different supplier chains. We have people who are doing the silicon, again, like the example of NXP, NVIDIA, whatever you name it. And then we have what's called tier one, and those are usually the Bosch, Valeo, or those kinds of companies who do the software layer and maybe the driver layer up to the application. And then either they also provide the software, or the OEM actually provide half or some parts of this software, especially on this high performance computing platforms. Yeah, because we don't have too much time, I will quickly want to tell you about this, how to go to this L4, L5 autonomous drive. So the problem, again, and as I explained before, to reach L4 and L5, you need the car to be able to drive on its own, to have its own brain. And to do this, you need to have it drive or to be tested, or at least to drive what's called 10 billion miles. And this is in the terminology now used in autonomous drive. All the people working in this field understand this terminology. You need the car to be able to drive 10 billion miles, to be able to test it in all conditions, all weather conditions, road conditions, all the hazards, all the potential use cases. And to run those 10 billion miles, this is a current investment, big investment from all the OEMs, is that they are building those scenarios, those use cases, which the car can face, so that they can test it in those use cases. So imagine you have 10 billion miles and you need to drive. And definitely, if you look, you will need 50,000 years, one car to drive it. So even if you have, imagine, even if 50,000 cars, then you will finish in 1 year. So if you want to, if you change anything in your software, in your architecture or whatever, you need the car, 50,000 car to drive for a year to be able to say, oh, now it's running and I can put it safely in the car. So imagine this number. And this is why quickly we will go into this disruptive challenge that I was talking about. So nowadays, the current, what's happening is ground truth. This is what's called ground truth, or proving that the car can be safe, that they are doing road tests. So they are taking the car and doing tests on real roads, and started to do some what's called open loop. So cars driving, and you can also see them a lot in the street, collecting the data from the street and giving this data to the simulation and do test scenarios and test the car with those scenarios. But this as well will not reach more than 100 million miles. If you have, again, there are lots of OEMs who are already have running cars in Europe and in US to gather the data, but still you will not be able to gather more than this. And now we need to go to what's called closed loop. And this is where the people with the cloud will be interested. So we will be closing the gap now, and automotive will come soon to the cloud, because we will need to run this, what I call 10 billion miles, and definitely creating those scenarios and running them. You cannot run them on a PC or on a server. You will need to run them on a cloud, so that with all the computing power, you can finish testing in the ideal. Actually, they are targeting for L5 what they call 4 hours. Testing, but of course this will take ages. So, but at least they are talking about days, and not to take 1 year with 50,000 cars running in the street to be able to finish your test. So you need to reach some small time, again, because if something happened with the car, you will need to do update of the software, do your test, and deploy it again in a few hours, and not days or years. And this is how we reach there with this what's called closed loop testing. Because and then how we as LookSoft with DXC are doing this. Yeah, thank you. So we as LookSoft, we already have this expertise in in-car software. So doing teleoperated driving, doing the perception, doing all the development of the sensing and high-performance computing. With DXC, have all the petabyte scale and all the analytic tools, doing all the ingestion and all the analyzing and sensor fusion, and their cloud solutions. We can then do the virtualization and integration, and then bridge this gap and do this solution. I think I can skip the teleoperated drive. I'll just show it to you. So, and I can take questions on the before, and people you can read it. So again, teleoperated is to have someone who has a wheel and or even a joystick in a center, and then using the 5G technology. So now LTE, but moving with 5G, and we are also working a lot in doing this 5G connection inside the cars. So we are also working with Vodafone to deploy it in Italy and test it on some cars to be able to drive with the technology of 5G to drive the cars from the centers and have this low latency. Because again, you cannot drive and then find the car after few minutes or even few seconds turning or whatever. You need to have real time, and we prove it already, and you can see already we did it with BMW and Vodafone in Italy. We already proved it that from the booth, which was in the US, again back to this example, controlling a car running in Italy remotely. Sorry?
Outsourcing.
Yeah, someone is inside. No, we had the camera inside showing that there was no one inside. I can show you the video offline. we put it, so BMW will not allow it, So we put it online already. So yeah, full auto. So no one was in the car, and then we did it actually 3 times, and one already, and CEO of one of the big companies, he was sitting in the back seat while this was controlled by the. And you imagine how he was afraid and scared. Yeah, the guy sitting in the back seat, and someone is controlling it from remote. Any questions? Because I think I'm out of time. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, sorry, quickly. The use case of teleoperated, logistics. This was the question about what are the industries. So again, when you do logistics, all the cars, you don't need really to have autonomous drive because you can do it someone in the operation center. Or like last thing is this kind of when you have all the cars getting out from the manufacturing, and then you need to align them or put them on the vehicles that will transport them. You don't need someone to do it. You can do it fully autonomous or with teleoperated driving. So this was a use case. So anyway, please, there was a question.
For the talk, I have 2 small questions.
Mm-hmm.
So first one, what do you think quantum computing will, it sounds like a challenge for quantum computing that can change it in an amazing way.
Yeah, definitely. So as I was saying, now only with L2 and L3, we are still looking at processing inside the cars, but with moving with L4 and L5, at least the training, we definitely will use quantum computing as a cloud and all those technologies to be able to do the simulation and the training, but also the processing of the data itself. At least this is my vision, is that it could happen in the cloud. Again, when you have 5G and you have coverage, then you can easily do some computing on the cloud and don't need to do it inside the cars. Okay.
Yeah, I'm missing one point. First is the energy.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose you never have taken into account that now around 2% of the electric energy worldwide is going into
electric vehicle.
Well, in the cloud.
Okay.
Or data centers. It will be in 2025. After Cisco 5%, and that represents, just the electric energy of Japan, who is now on the 4th rank in consumption. So when it comes to petabytes, or maybe we have even yottabytes, it's 2 steps further on, we will not solve this problem. It's and not for the cities. For the cities we just need a bike, maybe an e-bike, but not cars anymore.
Okay, so to quickly answer this, so 2 points. One, as I said, it could be cloud, but it could be also what's called in-house cloud. You don't need to run it on the public cloud. You can run all this simulation or processing inside what's called in-house, especially OEMs. They are, because again of trust issues, they are doing lots of things in in-house cloud. This doesn't reduce the energy consumption, of course, but imagine also the energy consumption that is happening now with the cars running in the road, burning all those, again, gasoline or diesel, and then transforming. And this is why, again, 2 targets for automotive in the next 10 to 30 years. The 2 targets are electrification, so changing from gasoline and diesel to electrical cars, and autonomous drive. And the idea is when you have autonomous drive, so and what I described is you will not be always using this computing power. You only use it when you train or need to deploy or test or train your car. And this is depending on the number of cars that you can get out again, on production, in a production phase. And this will not happen again. It's similar to the people doing tests. So you need to teach your car and the different types of cars. It will not be running 24/7. So I agree. It's a problem, but it needs to be solved anyway for electrification, not only for autonomous drive. Any more questions? Good. Okay. Yeah.
Did you predict any simulation data from countries like Egypt?
I'm not sure. So we are not the one collecting, So OEMs are the one collecting, like, and I know that they are running in the US, running in Europe, and running in Asia. I heard that, of course, there are lots of examples which run in India, which is kind of similar or maybe harder than Egypt. But yeah, but if you ask me when will we see the first car driving on its own in Egypt, I would say never, unless you have all the people, no drivers, no Egyptian drivers in the road. We will mess up any autonomous drive. Good.
Thank you so much. I think it was not planned that we have these two sessions. It was planned that we have two sessions like this, but we didn't know exactly that they would perfectly line up like that. But yeah, it's really nice. So I want... we have half an hour till we can leave from here, so please use this time to I don't know if there is still more food, if there is, or like have drinks or two, speak with people, especially we have here Amr Saleh. He's visiting Berlin, I think, for a month. I don't know. Ahmed is here. Amr is here. So he is having a connection with 500 startups, so he's looking for people who have ideas or startups either here or in Egypt or somewhere else, for probable connection to 500 startups. So it's a very great opportunity for people who have something. We have, I would like to have two things. First, we have called for speakers for the next meetup. So generally what we do before the next meetup, we have a call for speakers. So anyone would like to be on stage, like the people here or people before and other meetups, please contact us either through Meetup group or through our Facebook group, whatever. You can hit even any one of us, like me or Ashraf here with the blue shirt, or Abbas also as well with the glasses, so and others. The other thing that you will receive probably in 24 hours or 48 hours, a link from Meetup as a survey, like rate us and please give us your feedback. We take your feedback very seriously. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your night.